Cam Skattebo wasn't supposed to be here.
This guy is just a psychopath.
He projects as a low-end running back one.
Is he all there?
I'm not sure.
He was a zero-star recruit from Rio Linda, California. No major college offers, no elite speed, and no prototype size that NFL scouts dream about. But even after dominating college football, 31 NFL teams passed on him in the first 3 rounds. Not once, not twice, but 104 times before the Giants finally took a chance. And maybe that's because when scouts watched his tape, they didn't just see a football player, they saw a kid who headbutted brick walls before games, who celebrated by headbutting his teammates,
Utilizes his head as a weapon because it actually is.
This guy is built differently.
who seemed just a little too intense, a little too different for their comfort. But here's what they missed. Sometimes the player who doesn't fit the mold is exactly what a broken franchise needs. This is the story of how a kid who was told he wasn't good enough became the spark that could save the New York Giants. Growing up in Rio Linda, a small working-class town outside Sacramento, Cam Skattebo was that kid who did things a little differently. While other children played video games after school,
he would put his brother's shoulder pads on, and he would run into telephone poles.
his parents would watch from the kitchen window, shaking their heads as their youngest son prepared his body for a war that most people couldn't understand. Why does he do that to himself? His mother would ask his father. But Cam's dad understood. This wasn't about hurting himself. This was about preparing for something bigger. Cam had fallen in love with the violence and beauty of football, and he was willing to sacrifice his body to master it. When Cam joined the Rio Linda Knights varsity team as a sophomore, his coach immediately knew he had something special. Not just because of his talent, but because of his heart.
His thing is his work ethic, his toughness, all that kind of stuff. It's what he's always wanted to do. It's in his blood. It's in his heart.
This was a kid who approached every practice like it was the Super Bowl, every drill like his life depended on it. In his junior year, something magical happened. Cam carried the ball 305 times for 3,556 yards and 42 touchdowns. But those numbers don't tell the real story. The real story was watching a 17-year-old kid carry an entire town on his shoulders, game after game, refusing to let anyone down. The state championship game was when everyone realized Cam Skattebo was different. Rio Linda had never won a state title. They were the small-town underdogs facing a powerhouse program with college recruits at every position. But Cam didn't care about their recruiting rankings or their scholarship offers. He just knew his teammates were counting on him. What happened next was pure magic.
He just dominated no matter what.
Cam broke tackle after tackle, somehow staying on his feet when physics said he should go down. He'd get hit by 3 defenders and keep churning his legs, dragging them toward the end zone like he was pulling a sled. By the 4th quarter, the opposing team's defense was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. They'd never faced anyone who wanted it this badly. When the final whistle blew, Cam had rushed for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Rio Linda had their first state championship, and their hero was crying tears of joy in the middle of the field, surrounded by teammates who knew they just witnessed something special. But here's where the story gets heartbreaking. Despite everything Cam had accomplished, despite carrying his team to a state title, despite numbers that seemed impossible,
running for 3,500 yards and 42 touchdowns,
he got 0 Division I offers from FBS schools. 0. UCLA came to watch him play. USC sent scouts. All the major programs knew about the kid from Rio Linda who was putting up video game numbers. But they all walked away with the same concerns. He's 5 feet 9 inches tall, he runs a 4.65 40-yard dash, and honestly, he seemed a little too intense for their liking. Imagine being 17 years old, having just accomplished something incredible, and being told it's not good enough. Imagine watching teammates with half your production get full-ride scholarships while you sit by the phone waiting for a call that never comes. That's the reality Cam faced after his senior season. But thankfully, his story was just beginning. The rejection hurts. It hurt in a way that only kids who've poured their soul into something special can understand. Cam had given everything to football, and football was telling him he wasn't wanted. But instead of giving up, instead of feeling sorry for himself, Cam made a decision that would define his character. He was going to prove them all wrong. Sacramento State offered him a scholarship, and Cam accepted it with gratitude. It wasn't the Pac-12 offer he dreamed of, but it was a chance. And for a kid who'd been told he wasn't good enough his entire life, a chance was all he needed. What happened at Sacramento State was beautiful. Despite being in a limited role as a freshman, Cam still managed to average over 9 yards per carry. But more importantly, he was having fun again. He was that kid running into telephone poles, playing the game with pure joy and reckless abandon.
Time, picked up by Sacramento State. And really turning it to 6 at the other end. What a run! Into the end zone! Touchdown, Cameron Skattebo!
His teammates loved him because he was genuine. There was no pretense with Cam, no fake persona. He was the same intense, slightly crazy kid on the practice field as he was in the locker room. When he celebrated a touchdown by headbutting his offensive lineman, it wasn't for show. That was just Cam being Cam. But Cam had bigger dreams. After dominating at the FCS level, he decided to test himself against the best competition in college football. Arizona State, coming off a disappointing 3-9 season, was looking for players who could help turn their program around. Head coach Kenny Dillingham saw something in Cam that others had missed. He saw a player who could change the culture of an entire team.
Man, this dude had all those yards.
The move to Arizona State wasn't easy. Cam was leaving behind coaches who believed in him, teammates who'd become family, and a system where he was the star. He was walking into a program that was broken, with fans who'd lost hope and players who'd forgotten how to win. But Cam didn't care about any of that. He saw an opportunity to prove that a kid from Rio Linda could compete with anyone, anywhere. And he was willing to bet everything on himself. The doubters followed him to Arizona State. Sports analysts would watch his tape and question his mental state. Teammates would call him,
"Oh, yeah, you're a crazy individual."
And Cam would just laugh and say he was kidding, but everyone knew there was truth to it. What they didn't understand was that Cam's intensity wasn't a weakness. It was his superpower. In a sport that had become increasingly sanitized, increasingly focused on protecting players from themselves, Cam was a throwback to when football was about heart and grit and refusing to quit.
I never want to be tackled, and I get out of some things that people don't expect to get out of. From a young age, I guess, getting out of the car seat, I never thought I wouldn't be able to get out.
The 2024 season started with low expectations for Arizona State. They'd been irrelevant for years, and most people expected more of the same. But Cam had other plans. After a dominant performance against Mississippi State in Week 2, where he rushed for over 200 yards, college football started paying attention to the transfer from Sacramento State. What followed was magical. Arizona State went from laughingstock to contender, finishing the regular season 9-2. Cam was the engine that drove everything, but more importantly, he was the heart and soul of a team that had rediscovered its identity.
Here is Skattebo. Wow, contact beat. Rumbles into the end zone.
The Big 12 championship game was Cam's coming out party. Against Iowa State, he was unstoppable, breaking tackles and bulldozing defenders with the same intensity he'd shown as a high school kid in Rio Linda. Arizona State won convincingly, and Cam was finally getting the recognition he'd always deserved. But his masterpiece came in the college football playoff quarterfinals against Texas. Even though Arizona State lost, Cam's performance was legendary. 242 total yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 42-yard touchdown pass. He was literally doing everything for his team, playing with the desperation of someone who knew this might be his last chance to prove he belonged. After the game, even though they'd lost, Cam was named the offensive MVP. Standing on that field, exhausted and heartbroken but proud, Cam had proven something important. He could compete with anyone, anywhere, at any level. His senior season statistics were incredible. Over 1,700 rushing yards, 600 receiving yards, 24 combined touchdowns, and a 5th-place finish in Heisman voting. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. The story was about a kid who'd been counted out his entire life, finally getting the respect he'd always deserved. When it came time for the NFL draft, the same old criticism surfaced. He's not fast enough, he's not big enough, and that intensity that had carried him this far was now being viewed as a liability. Mock drafts had him going anywhere from the 4th to the 7th round, with some analysts suggesting he might go undrafted entirely. Draft day was torture. Cam sat with his family watching as running back after running back got selected ahead of him. Each pick that went by without his name being called was another reminder of all the times he'd been overlooked, all the times he'd been told he wasn't good enough. Round after round, teams passed on the kid who just finished 5th in Heisman voting, who'd single-handedly turned around a college program. Finally, with the 105th overall pick in the 4th round, the phone rang. It was the New York Giants, a franchise that had been searching for an identity for years, calling to tell Cam his dream was finally coming true.
Okay, and without further ado, with the 105th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Cam Skattebo, running back, Arizona State.
The Giants hadn't had an exciting offensive player in years. Their running game had been anemic, their offense predictable, and their fans had lost hope. But general manager Joe Schoen saw something in Cam that 30 other teams had missed. He didn't care about the 40 time or the personality quirks. He cared about heart, and Cam had more heart than anyone.
He's going to do everything he can do for the New York Giants so he can go out there and perform at his best.
Cam was projected to be a backup, and expectations weren't high for the late-round rookie. But anyone who'd followed his journey knew that Cam Skattebo thrived when people doubted him. Every time someone told him he wasn't good enough, he found another gear to shift to. Week 6 against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football was when America met the real Cam Skattebo. The 1 and 4 Giants were massive underdogs against their division rivals, but Cam was about to show the entire NFL what they'd missed. First quarter, Giants ball near the goal line. Cam took the handoff and did what he'd been doing his entire life. He refused to be denied. 3 Eagles defenders hit him at the same time, but Cam kept churning his legs, dragging them into the end zone for his first NFL touchdown. The crowd at MetLife Stadium erupted, but more importantly, Cam's teammates saw something they hadn't seen in years. A player who would do anything to win. But Cam wasn't done proving his point. Later in the game, facing a crucial 3rd down, Cam took another handoff and did something that made everyone watching remember why they fell in love with football in the first place. He jumped over the pile, landed in the end zone, and then did a backflip to celebrate. After scoring, he headbutted his offensive lineman, the same celebration he'd been doing since high school. By the end of the night, Cam had 3 rushing touchdowns and the Giants had upset the Eagles. But more importantly, he'd reminded everyone what football was supposed to look like. Passionate, physical, and played with pure joy. After the game, Cam stood shirtless in the tunnel, water dripping from his hair, screaming with his teammates like they just won the Super Bowl. This was the intensity that had scared away scouts, but it was exactly what the Giants needed. For the first time in years, there was genuine excitement in New York. What makes Cam special isn't just his ability, it's his authenticity. In a league full of carefully managed personalities and corporate speak interviews, Cam is refreshingly real. The Giants haven't had a player like this in years. Someone who brings old-school physicality to a modern game. Someone who makes defenders think twice before attempting a tackle. Someone who can change the culture of an entire franchise with his energy and passion. Cam's rookie season is just getting started, but he's already shown flashes of greatness. More importantly, he's brought something back to the Giants that had been missing for too long. Cam Skattebo wasn't supposed to be here, but the New York Giants and all the fans who've fallen in love with his story are sure glad he is. Hey, if you like this take on Cam Skattebo, I know you're gonna love this video too.